Welcome to the Commonwealth of Learning's podcast series, Sustainability and Growth, Women Leaders Driving Long-Term Success in NGOs. I am Dr. Ann Wallace, and I am your host. The development of civil society and peace in the world are but some of the commitments of the Commonwealth of Learning. In this quest, CALL supports institutions around the globe by helping them to solve local problems with local solutions. In this podcast series, we seek to illustrate to women and girls the importance of service to community by highlighting the sterling work done by female NGO leaders around the world. Developing people is one of the hallmarks of leadership. A leader is not great just because she holds the leadership title, but because she empowers others to recognize and tap into their own leadership capabilities. Our guest today is one such leader. Speaking with us on leadership and NGOs is a charming lady from Canada who was born and nurtured in the land of the brave, Namibia. She is Mrs. Frances Ferreira, the Senior Advisor, Women and Girls of the Commonwealth of Learning, a massive intergovernmental organization hosted by the Government of Canada. Since 2007, she has held numerous posts at CALL, including Education Specialist, Basic Education and Open Schooling, Senior Advisor, Women and Girls, Education Specialist, Gender, Acting Director, Skills. If asked, she would say her most significant achievements at the Commonwealth of Learning are two major projects for which she held leadership. The multi-country OER for OS, that is, Open Education Resources for Open Schools, and Girls Inspire. Her experience and her background are vast, as you could well imagine, and I shall share them with you as we chat with her today. Welcome, Mrs. Frances Ferreira.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wallace, for the warm welcome and your kind introduction. I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go straight into our questions. And I start by saying to you, as Senior Advisor, Women and Girls, you engaged in facilitating the empowerment of girls in Bangladesh, Malawi, Mozambique, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and that's just a few of them. And through this work, you are also facilitating the growth of NGOs with a concerted effort to support women and girls in leadership roles in NGOs. Why NGOs?
Thank you, Anne, for that question. As you know, the Commonwealth of Learning was established to support governments in the Commonwealth to expand education through ODL and technology-mediated learning. So CALL's usual partners are governments and governmental institutions like universities and colleges, schools. But when it comes to a project with a specific focus, we are exploring partners who are more aligned to the brief of such a project. In this case, the Empowering Women and Girls is about social change. It is about changing societal norms, and NGOs often have a unique advantage when it comes to influencing change because they operate outside of government constraints and can focus entirely on social impact. For the Empowering Women and Girls project to succeed, we must work, therefore, with partners who are agile, who are independent, and with grassroots connections. We know that government institutions are tied to political cycles, bureaucratic procedures, or as people say, all the red tape, and competing national priorities. While NGOs focus solely on impact-driven change One of the main arguments for working with NGOs, for me specifically, on a project like this would be their proximity to the communities. They work directly with communities, as you have alluded in the introductory section of this podcast. They understand local challenges and needs, and they are able to creating solutions that truly resonate with those communities. So while government priorities may shift based on elections, we know NGOs have long-term commitments and they remain dedicated to causes for decades, ensuring sustained impact instead of short-term fixes. So they can often also work across borders more easily, bringing global expertise and funding into local problems. Uh, they challenge systemic inequalities in ways governments might avoid for political reasons. Just a few days ago, speaking under correction, it was last week, the Child Marriage Restraint Bill has been passed by both National Assembly and the Senate in Pakistan, marking a major victory for girls living in the Islamabad capital territory. This progressive legislation came to pass. Why? Because of a more than a decade long advocacy and pressure of many committed NGOs and community-based civil society organizations in Pakistan. Two of those are the partners that we are working with on this project, Empowering Women and Girls. So that is why we work on projects such as this with NGOs.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I am really very pleased to hear about the passing of that bill because I know it is one of the things that you have been working on. As a matter of fact, in my research, I realized that NGOs in the 21st century are are centered around a lot of interrelated areas: gender-based violence, violence against elderly women, women with disabilities, their NGOs on maternal mortality and gender equality, disaster management, economic growth, cyber harassment, and then there is the focus that is most perhaps troubling to us as women is the harmful cultural practices that include the very child marriage you've just spoken about. So kudos and congratulations on that. There's also issues of dowry and FGM and labial pulling and breast ironing. So I know that there is a lot for you to choose, if you will, from. What makes you choose a particular NGO to support? Or let me put it another way. What makes you accept a particular request to support a given NGO with all of these areas that they're covering?
Well, one of the main things for me that I look at, there are many things. I mentioned a few, but one of the main things for me is whether this NGO has a good standing in the community. Because if they do not have a good standing in the community, then there's no start. Our work depends on working with the community. We are addressing the community's needs. So if an NGO doesn't have a good standing with the community, then they are out.
Okay.
Uh, so they must also have a well-defined purpose and a long-term commitment to their cause. So you cannot just yesterday start this NGO and think today, oh, we will join forces with the Commonwealth of Learning. We need to see your history. So we want to see your track record of success. And
Mm-hmm.
so therefore we look for organizations with a proven results and tangible impact in their focus area. So you cannot uh, 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 propose that we will work towards ending child marriage, uh, and then you don't have any history in having done any work in that area.
Right.
So the issue of transparency and accountability is also very important. A reputable NGO is open about its funding, its impact, and decision-making processes. And then lastly, the issue that we are here for, strong leadership and expertise. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to see in that NGO the presence of knowledgeable, ethical leaders and experienced professionals. That should be the indicators for me to decide, let's work with this NGO.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear that that is behind your reasoning for selecting to work for with an NGO, because we know that not all NGOs are created equally for the reasons
Yes.
that you've just suggested. Someone just gets up and decides, I want an NGO tomorrow. And then there are others that are supported in a number of ways. On the one hand, there are grassroots NGOs. These are the community based ones that you spoke about. They're dealing with local issues, they have direct community involvement, they use volunteers for the most part. And the thing is that they have minimal funding to operate. On the other hand, there are the gongos and the ingos. The gongos are operationally independent, but they are aligned with government policies. And the ingos operate across borders, normally dealing with world challenges like poverty alleviation, human rights, and the big ticket items like climate change. My question is, of these three, gongos, ingos, and grassroots NGOs, where does CALL find its time and resources best spent?
But I think you have answered the question by already mentioning that uh, these international non-governmental organizations were established to deal with global issues that transcend national borders, and you've mentioned them like humanitarian crises,
Mhm.
environmental issues. On the other hand, the gongos, as you call them, the government-organized NGOs, as their name is saying, they are organized and established by governments. And therefore, to me, they are an extension of government, and they
Right.
are influenced and controlled by government. And I
Mhm.
said on the first part, the first question where you've asked why NGOs, we need that agility, we need that flexibility. So for that reason, we will not work with international NGOs or with government NGOs on a project such as this because they were not established to address social, environmental, humanitarian, and development challenges that governments often overlook. But they, that is now the international, the NGOs are established to address these issues that
Mhm.
governments overlook and that governments sometimes struggle to manage. So they emerge in response to a specific crisis or injustice in that
Mhm.
country, and they
Mhm.
are driven by that need for independent and community focused solutions. So to be able to be flexible and agile and working with the community, you need an organization that's on the ground. And that's why we will rather go to the NGO because they have the ability to challenge norms, to
Mhm.
build trust, to create community driven change. I mean, if I look at the project that we are currently doing, I've visited the countries, I've spoken to communities, I'm sitting with community members, and you can see that pride that they have, that they are acknowledged as part of this change, that they have a role in this change. Because we have introduced the community report card where communities can monitor the project. So
Mhm.
I don't think an international organization will sit down with the community and say, we want you to do A, B, C, and D, and we come back. Maybe they do, but they won't have that flexibility that an NGO have and that proximity to go
Mhm.
on a monthly basis back to the community and speak to the community. And they understand the communities firsthand. So
Mhm.
because of their independence, they can openly advocate for women's rights without political restrictions. This bill that I've referred to is more than a decade, and we were part of this. It's part of the Girls Inspire. We were part of that process, monitoring it, watching it, influencing it through our partners. It takes time, but the politicians changed in the meantime. But
Mhm.
the NGOs, the cause of the NGOs didn't change. So
Mhm.
obviously, the political agenda also changed, but the NGOs' agenda did not necessarily change, and that is why they could continue to forge this. Because an international organization, for instance, must navigate diplomatic international relations, and that can limit their ability to challenge systemic gender inequality, for instance, directly in a country.
Mhm.
And because the Congo is tied to the government, they may avoid, on the other hand, confronting policies that need change due to
Right.
the political sensitivities. So the reason why we work with NGOs is clear. They are on the ground, they have the agility, they have the flexibility, and that is what we need.
Great. So I understand that, and I think I very much appreciate that. You want that agility, you want the flexibility, and you want the independence, and so that they can really tune in to the needs of the community without all the other directives that may come at them if they were otherwise associated. But that brings me to another question. And given that these NGOs are not for profit entities, they depend on donations. When you have selected an NGO the way you have just described, are they permitted, or do you invite any other entities to contribute to their funding, or do they get their funding solely from yourselves and the activities that they carry out?
Our project is funded by Global Affairs Canada, but core values partnerships. And there are advantages to collaboration. So relying on a single sponsor can be risky. So if funding is reduced or withdrawn, the NGO may struggle to sustain that program.
Mhm.
We know of many such examples, especially what happened recently to some of the partners. But because this project is funded by Global Affairs Canada, our understanding is that the funding is sufficient for the implementation of this phase of the project plan.
Mhm. Mhm.
But for the sustainability, our model makes provision. It is built into the model and
Mhm.
encourages NGOs to partner with businesses, foundations, TVET institutions, banks, governments to achieve innovative and sustainable solutions. So to answer your question, they are free um, to request additional funding from another funder.
Mhm.
We, as the Commonwealth of Learning, in this specific project, we do not directly invite sponsors, other sponsors. And
Okay.
our partners, the onus is on them to collaborate with other donors and
Mhm.
governments. And that which will allow them for scaling up and for sustainability. So most of the partners, I've just visited Pakistan in February, most of our partners do have other funding sources for various projects because this is one of their projects. They don't have, as an NGO operates, they have more than one project.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
sometimes there may be an overlap between our project and another donor's project. And our understanding is then that the credit is then shared proportionately based on the level of involvement. So
Okay.
yes, we are open to collaboration and we are open to additional funding as long as we then establish the rules of engagement to
Mhm.
make sure that each partner is recognized accordingly because there are rules within each donor grant agreement to say
Mhm.
this is how we want you to acknowledge us, this is how we want you to acknowledge us if you bring in another partner. So the door is open
Okay.
for them. But at the moment, this project is solely funded by the Commonwealth of Learning, while partners are expanding through collaborative work with other NGOs or international NGOs, perhaps, or other funding agencies,
Mhm.
where there is an instance, for instance, where the government will provide the facility, the government school, and we are providing the trainers to train, for instance, girls in a school where persons with disabilities, those that deaf, are trained in needlework or in such courses. So our funding provides the training, our
Mhm.
funding provides the equipment, but we are shared that in collaborating with the government, with the school, and the learners are already there in the school, for instance, as
Okay,
an
wonderful.
example.
That's great. So at least there is room for sustainability, um, despite a given project being funded by yourselves. And perhaps if that project comes to an end while they're waiting for a new one, their organization can carry on because they are open to collaborating with other entities. Thank you very much for that.
Yes,
And
yes.
on
If
that,
I can just
go
add
ahead.
there,
Mhm.
thank you. So I can just add that, and that is why the project's model is built in such a way that the community is an integral part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is in the model, the built-in for collaboration, so that because many times you say, oh, you have done all of that good stuff in that country, and now what is happening when you leave?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is happening when we leave. We have a built-in sustainability uh, um, plan for this project, and that is an excellent question that you have asked, and I'm happy that I could answer to that.
Thank you very much. And I'm very glad you gave that extension to your answer because it brings me to the issue of the community involvement by way of volunteerism. Now, that is a key component in NGO work, and it really is commendable that people would give up their time for a cause. But my question is, in your experience, apart from the obvious financial implications of volunteerism, is volunteerism the best source of skill and labor for NGOs?
Um, I have to be very careful how to answer this one because I am an advocate for volunteerism, and in fact, it is really a very important skill and very important in NGOs. But it should not be the sole source.
Ah,
It should not be the sole source because on its own it is not sustainable. It
mhm,
is short term. So I may volunteer because I don't have a job, or I am retired. I'm volunteering. So I may get uh, retired. I may move to my grandchildren, and then I cannot volunteer anymore. So while we may think volunteerism saves money, on the other hand, one must also consider that there is time that goes into training volunteers,
yeah,
coaching them, while a
mhm,
full-time person starts with a job and can just hit the ground running.
mhm,
So there is also the issue of accountability.
yes,
I don't think we can hold volunteers accountable. That rests with full-time staff and not the volunteer.
mhm,
So for me, the better model is a balance of
yeah,
volunteerism with trained staff to ensure sustainability. So full-time professionals, they provide the consistent leadership while volunteers add the energy and the specialized skills when needed. So it is an interesting question because we have built in volunteerism in the project's model. Because in the project, we have a section where we have asked partners to introduce an activity where they identify previous graduates from their projects and use them as volunteers.
mhm,
So, in this way, they can ensure that the volunteers are familiar with the organization's objectives and culture and make the learning curve less steep for such volunteers. So,
mhm,
offering internships is one of the things, and skill building programs can help them to develop long term talent pipelines. And so, while it is still volunteers, they ensure in this process now that they have a core group of volunteers that there is a prospect of a job for them and not for, oh, I will just drop out. That is why I'm looking
yes.
at that balance.
Okay. Good. That's great because you're quite right about volunteers. There are a number of reasons that people volunteer, and for those very reasons, they may no longer be available. Then what happens to the project? So I'm glad to hear that that is the approach you have. Uh, an NGO is usually started by someone with a passion. In most cases, it's someone who has a passion for some situation or item or the other, and they start an NGO. But is it your experience that that very passion is sufficient for the efficient and effective running of the NGO? Or have you found that the same passion gets in the way of execution?
Wow, what a question. I'm very passionate. You are very passionate. So I don't think passion would get in the way. Look, passion is absolutely essential when running an NGO, in my
Mhm,
opinion. It
mhm,
drives the commitment, it inspires action, and it keeps motivation high, especially during difficult times. But passion alone is not enough. We should be honest here. Passion is the fuel, but the structure, the financial sustainability, the operational efficiency, those are the vehicle that turns the enthusiasm into a real change. So I
Mhm.
have a lot of passion, but I will not succeed just by sharing that passion over and over again. I must have a plan. So within the leadership of any NGO, while you can see and feel the passion, um, it will get in the way. Maybe I change my mind here and say it
Mhm.
can get in the way. It can get in the way if I do not have a plan. Maybe I should
Right.
rephrase that and say it can get in the way if I don't have a plan. So
Mhm.
I must have a plan. Otherwise, yes, it may get into the way.
Mhm. Good. Well, Francis, I can certainly feel your passion about these NGOs. Every time I speak with you, I get it loud and clear. And I know that not only is the raison d'etre of your job the empowerment of women and girls, it's also your personal goal. So is therefore to be expected that you would promote the creation and running of NGOs by females. But have you been able to compare the effectiveness of a female run NGO as opposed to a male run NGO?
Well, the answer is no, I did not. I
Mm,
did not. Um, and I did not do any research on the effectiveness of any organization being run by a female and being run by a male, what is, who's
mhm,
more successful. I'm
mhm,
just taking it from my own experience.
mhm,
The reason why I am specifically interested in building the capacity of women in NGOs is because studies indicate that men often rise to top leadership roles faster, even in female dominated sectors. And this is a phenomenon that they sometimes refer to as the glass escalator for men. So,
mhm,
working with NGOs, mostly being led by females, where we are working in these countries, I want to ensure that we have role models and
mhm,
that we have a model where female leaders can aspire to run NGOs to address much needed social challenges in their communities. Uh, I think it goes back to your previous question. While passion can sometimes get in the way, passion is an integral part of
mhm,
the success of running an NGO. And I'm biased here, but I feel as a woman, uh, females are more passionate about what they believe in compared
mhm,
to uh, our male counterparts.
mhm,
And I want to, through this work, build that capacity of female leaders in NGOs uh, to show that we can drive this. We are struggling to get women in politics, in
mhm,
parliament.
mhm,
Why? I don't know. And I cannot really go into the political arena to try and build women's capacity there to get them in parliament.
mhm,
But the NGOs can, from the back end, work towards empowering young women and girls, giving them leadership training, and prepare them for such roles. But
mhm,
if you do not have a strong female leader that is a role model to
mhm.
inspire the younger generation, we will not get into parliament.
Yeah.
So, yes, I didn't do such comparison, um, but I know female are actual excellent leaders, and I want to really shine a light on that through this
Mhm.
project.
Thank you, Francis. I think you're quite right. I believe that females are excellent leaders for a number of reasons. And, it's really not necessary for us to weigh up. We know that what the establishment is already for male organizations. Uh, I'll ask a question that perhaps sounds like a question, a male question. And it is the fact that you are fighting to ensure that women leaders do this and they do it right. And we know that they come generally with a passion. Have you found that as women, their administrative functions and their financial skills are in place and are effectively and professionally presented in the NGOs?
Based on the NGOs I'm
Mhm.
working with, I
Mhm.
can answer without hesitation, yes.
Great.
They are aware that we expect financial accountability and transparency. And I would take you back to an earlier question about why do you identify the specific NGO? And one of the issues that I mentioned was transparency and financial accountability. So these NGOs, they know that mismanagement can lead to loss of trust. It can reduce future funding opportunities. It can stop the funding, but it can also reduce future funding opportunities. So
Mhm.
non-compliance can result in penalties, loss of their credibility, or even the shutdown of them. So good governance ensures NGOs remain impactful and resilient in the long run. Having said that, we have to place structures in place to ensure compliance at all times.
Mhm.
We should not uh, now, because we know that they are excellent leaders, they're excellent NGOs, we cannot now be complacent and say, oh, it's all good. We
Mhm.
have to put structures in place to ensure compliance at all times and to ensure that they are run effectively and professionally. Commonwealth of Learning, through this project, have put in place a project governance and management structure. So you referred to the OER for Open Schools project earlier, which was my first multi-country project at the Commonwealth of Learning. And I've used lessons learned from that project as
Mhm.
well from the Girls Inspire, because uh, in that project, I didn't work directly with communities and NGOs, but in the Girls Inspire project, I did.
Mhm.
And we have established a project management structure for the Empowering Women and Girls project, which all NGOs must adhere to. And this includes a capacity building a plan, a monitoring and evaluation strategy, a project management plan, which includes standardized reporting structures and project work plans, which all partners must adhere to. And when I say standardized, it means everybody must do the same thing. And in that way, it is easy to make that type of comparisons and to see the
Mhm.
gaps.
Mhm.
But we also introduce a communication strategy for all partners.
Mhm.
And all of these things that I've mentioned, it links back to the budget.
Yeah.
It links back to the budget. So it is quite a rigorous management plan, and it doesn't guarantee 100% efficiency and success, but I can tell you it guarantees efficiency and success. The
Mhm.
percentage, I cannot tell you how much, but it
Well,
does guarantee efficiency and success, but also it's a good communication strategy then also between us, but it's also a good way for us to manage and to know that everything is effectively and professionally run.
that's great. Uh, on the issue of the budget that you've mentioned, and granted, as you've explained, you ensure with all the governance structures in place that there is professionalism throughout the running of the projects that call supports. I am aware of projects not necessarily supported by yourselves, but you hear of NGOs running projects that have come to an abrupt end because of the budget, because they have run out of funding. Could it be sometimes that NGOs, in their desire to ensure their budget gets their project gets accepted and approved, that they present a minuscule budget in the hope of getting approval right away, and then later on it is insufficient to complete the project? Or is there a bigger problem there?
I think in this case, it can be that there is a bigger problem. In the first place, a bigger problem in the sense that when you start working as a donor with such an NGO, it is imperative that you ensure from this end whatever work you have set out for that NGO to do are properly funded.
Yeah.
So, so for that reason, in our case, each partner present an activity-based budget. So
Mhm.
you have an activity-based budget. So for each activity, there is a budget line.
Mhm.
So you cannot halfway come and say, "Oh, we don't have funding there." So the problem is, uh, in first place, you didn't do a proper budget, as you say, minuscule just to get it through. So for us, we do not do that. And my suggestion is for any project funds to be requested, there should be an activity-based budget. Now, that is not the only thing that should be put in place to prevent this type of thing from happening. That upfront, the donor should also communicate that we have a reporting structure. And when
Mhm.
you report, the reporting is according to the activities.
Mhm.
So every 3 months, your report comes in and say, these were the activities that we have executed during this period. This is the spending, and this is the proof. This is the evidence that we have done these activities. And based on that, the next tranche of funding is then transferred.
Mhm.
So the bigger problem to me, or the onus for this problem to me, is within the donor. Then in the first instance, the second part is, yes, it is possible that all of that is in place, but then the partner that you are working with, the NGO that you are working with, maybe there was an error of judgment on your part to work with such a partner,
Mhm.
because they may not be as stable, they may not be as financially prudent as you have originally thought. So for me, when I identify partners, I visit the country first and I have a face to face. So it
Mhm.
is not only documentation that's coming, because you can read a lot through just talking to a person.
Mhm.
You can read a lot through an email, but in both instances, you can make mistakes. But if you put the two together, there
Mhm.
is a higher chance of success in your assessment. So it is important to also visit such places and look at the documentation to identify whether this is the right partner.
Mhm.
So if it is the right partner, uh, these things should not happen. And if you have the proper structures in place, these things should not happen. So for me, budgets should be uh, uh, activity-based budgets, and it should be linked to the outcomes reporting of the
Mhm.
project. Remember, I said earlier that the structure that we put in place, uh, structure that we have put in place, all links back to the budget again.
Mhm.
So that is when I talk about the activity. So even if they have campaigns, advocacy campaigns, they should put in the budget how much. But then putting back to the evidence, they should indicate how many
Mhm.
advocacy campaigns were there.
Mhm.
What is the evidence that there were these advocacy campaigns? So I think in such cases of such NGOs, there might be a problem on the donor side or on the NGO side. We won't know until we investigate such
Right.
a case. But to prevent it, my advice is for the donor to do due diligence, but
Mhm.
also to support the NGOs throughout the
Mhm.
process, through managing them properly, through advising them when they pick up something is not correct.
Mhm.
For us, for instance, you have to submit your deliverables where you show or proof of everything you have done. You have to show your financial statement. And then you have to also provide your next quarter's plan. So to show, well, we have done this, so this is what we will do. But while we do have your performance management framework, we still need to know if that is now put into practice. Is there a plan? How will you do it? So yes, it's a very important question, and it is really something that raises concern when we find that an NGO is not what we thought it is and how they portray themselves. And it can be sometimes devastating to donors because in such a situation, the donor is dropping the ball basically on that community who look
Mm-hmm.
forward for this work to happen in
Right.
this. And because the donor maybe selected a wrong, not a wrong, a partner that was not suitable, uh, the donor cannot do the work there. And I've visited the communities, as I said to you, many communities in this work. And
Mm-hmm.
you can see how happy they are, how grateful they are. And you can imagine if you now have to drop the ball on them because not because you withdraw the funding, but you can no longer work with such a partner, how
Mm-hmm.
that will impact on their lives and livelihoods.
Wow, well, it clearly is a lot of work on the donor. I didn't realize how involved the donor has to be in the project. So now when I see or hear of a project that has stalled, I'll certainly wonder, if the donor fell asleep there, because you seem to have to do a lot of work to ensure. And I like the fact that that aside from this entity, this NGO you're working with, it's the people that it's supposed to be serving and supporting who are looking to you. They're looking beyond the NGO. They're looking to you, the donor, for their support. So thank you very much for that very detailed response. Francis, you are the first chief executive of the state-owned Namibian College of Open Learning, and you were the chief of the Namibian Open Learning Network Trust, as well as chair of the Distance Education Association of Southern Africa. It's fair, I believe, to say that you are deeply rooted in open and distance learning. In fact, you were recognized at CALL's second Pan Commonwealth Forum on Open Learning for your vast contribution in that area. And given the very detailed, the very clearly articulated answer you gave me just now to the last question, I wonder, given the challenges that you recognize are there in these NGOs, particularly the grassroots NGOs that we're talking about, would you recommend that aspiring female leaders of NGOs study, and I'm creating a word here, NGOism, as a course through open and distance learning? And I say open and distance learning as opposed to bricks and mortar learning, because we are talking with people who've got to hold down some other means of income while they study. So, do you think they should study to be an NGO in an open and distance learning passion, so that when they come with their passion, they also have the kind of knowledge that you've explained is necessary to keep them grounded in the fundamentals of leading the organization? It's a mouthful because you gave me a mouthful just now in the response, and I had all these thoughts about what you could be doing.
Thank you, Anne. That is really a mouthful and a great question. And thank you also for your kind comments about myself. You know what? I never thought of a formal qualification in NGOism for the leaders. And I think maybe because I'm too overwhelmed in the work. But uh, I also know that while passion is the driving force within NGOs or behind NGOs, structured learning in NGO management, governance, and leadership ensures that enthusiasm, that
Mhm.
passion translates into a sustainable impact. And for this reason, at the moment, we do have a structured plan where we build the capacity of these NGOs, where on a monthly basis, we have different training sessions for NGOs, project management, monitoring and evaluation, communication. So I am acutely aware of the fact that uh, the 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 staff members, the people within the NGOs, they are the most valuable asset. And if that asset is not properly taken care of, the NGO may not go where they want to go. And
Mhm.
so that's why your idea of a formal qualification uh, is an excellent idea. And while it is not part of this project, because the project is about the people out there, one should be cognizant of the fact that for the people out there to have the benefit and for the sustainability of the project, the people behind the scenes may need that capacity. So this is certainly something worth considering because formal training will equip the leaders with tools and to scale their organizations, to enhance the credibility. But moreover, in any field, there is a need for a qualification to ensure that the leaders and staff have the capacity to carry out their functions accordingly. So there is one question that I'm frequently being asked by many partners. See, one is two, it's linked to each other. And the one is, how can we mobilize resources? How can we write funding proposals? So, of course, in NGOism is probably something worth considering
Mhm,
in the future.
mhm. Well, I like your response very much because you said it's perhaps something worth considering in the future. And I know that that kind of perhaps coming from you suggests some ideas already going on in your head because you are, could almost call you a first lady. You're a lady of first. I wouldn't be surprised you'd be the first to come up with one. As the first female mayor of Grootfontein. You have done service, excellent yeoman service to that role, and you have advanced in such a highly placed global position, making a difference in the lives of many, particularly women and girls. What is your message to young girls across the Commonwealth? And in fact, to girls all over the world about how to craft the trajectory of their careers. Girls need guidance.
Thank you, Anne, for those kind words. Yes, girls need guidance and girls need role models. And that is why we also having this podcast. So,
Mhm,
first of all, I want to say to girls all over the world, do not let your circumstances define you. You have to step out of that and you have to follow your dream because dreams can come true. We have to dream big and we have to work towards those dreams. Uh, I personally had a dream more than 25 years ago to come to Canada one day and to work at the Commonwealth of Learning. But I just thought, it's not possible. Um, and then here I am. Here I am. Because you cannot just dream and think, oh, the dream will just happen. You have to work towards that dream. You have to put a plan in place to achieve that dream. When I speak to girls in the villages, where I meet them in this project, where I spoke to girls when I was part of the open schooling community, my message is always uh, take care of yourself, put yourself first because you want to influence the community. You cannot influence the community if you don't know who you are and where you want to be. So you have to work towards yourself. And that is why, um, as you have so beautifully said earlier about you work at your home office, this is how you always present yourself. And that is important. We should always present ourselves in a way that people can turn their head and say, oh, who was that girl? She's quite impressive. When we open our mouths to talk, we should think twice. We should think about what we are saying. We should think about how it's coming out. So, because words matter, people listen to us.
mhm,
So, as a young girl in Namibia, I never thought I will ever come to this part of the world. My late father was always concerned about the environmental challenges, the hurricanes, the floods. How do people live there? And today I live here, uh, unafraid of those things because I'm here because of the cause. And
mhm,
that is the dream that I'm talking about. You have to realize the dream. So
mhm,
it is important that we, as a young girl, that we say to ourselves, where do I want to be? in 5 years. Don't put a goal for in 30 years. It's not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I did. I had a 5 year goal. And
Mm-hmm.
as the 5 years goes over, I said, oh, what next for the next 5 years? And then the 5 years became a 10-year goal because the work that I was involved in demanded of me to stay longer. So I said, okay, I have to take another 5 years. But every 5 years, you have to go back and say, where am I now? So
Yeah.
yeah, you can put the 30-year plan there, but in the
Mm-hmm.
plan, you have goals, short-term goals so that you can work. Because in any performance management framework that we are working, actually, we have a long-term goal, we have an ultimate outcome, but we have short-term outcomes and we have outputs. So I would think my life was like that, where I had all of this, but you have to be
Mm-hmm.
consciously working towards that. And you cannot think people will do it for you. And we should remember, life is not fair. One time, one thing happened to me, and I was an adult with 4 children already, but I said to a colleague of mine, but this is not fair. Then the person answered me, since when was life fair? And I said, I thought if I have all of this and that, I will get. He said, no, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. But also, I want to say to young girls, ensure that you have a support structure.
Yes.
You will focus on your own dreams, but you cannot walk the road alone. You have to have a support structure. Share your dreams with your loved ones. Share your dreams with your friends that you can trust in a safe place, that they can support you in this dream of yours. Some of us are now coming to the end of our careers, but we still have the opportunity to impact and influence the younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say to the younger generation I'm working with, one day I would be so proud of seeing you there. But then I look at their faces and they look full of shock. How can you see me in that position? I see you there. You should see yourself there. So the last thing I want to say is you should believe in yourself. Sometimes we are our biggest enemy. We
Mm-hmm.
don't believe in ourselves. And that is where we are self sabotaging ourselves.
Yes.
Believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest will come.
Yeah.
Hard work. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you for asking for answering that way. I what I hear is dream, but this is not just a dream, dreaming with a vision. And I guess that is what we can expect to come from you as an education specialist. In fact, you're a former teacher and a former school principal. So I could understand that you would have these dreams and you would have them with the vision. But I think there's also some need in the system to help these young girls. What would you say, given your background, your knowledge, and the way you see a person charting their course forward, what educational reform do you envisage as necessary to ensure that particularly disadvantaged girls are exposed to the type of education that helps them to become leaders with decision making capabilities and being able to be grounded in a social and economic realities that they are living with? We're not talking about pipe dreams. We're talking about the kinds of dreams you mentioned, dreams with a vision. How do you see education reform assisting this?
Thank you, Anne. We really live in a time that we thought by now we would have catered for all of these challenges because we are aware of them. I mean, when we went to Beijing more than 30 years ago for the fourth Women's Conference, most of these challenges that girls are facing were brought to the table. Governments were there, they made commitments. And 30 years down the line, we are faced with many of these challenges still. The reforms didn't take place. Why didn't the reforms take place? And I think one of the things is that if we have leadership in place that cares about the cause, we may have these reforms. So this is not a reform. This to me is something to say, I wish we have more leaders in place that have an understanding of the real challenges. When I was the mayor of Grootfontein, I know I went to the compounds where I spoke to the community, where I listened to them, because I cannot change the city if I don't know what are the needs and the challenges of the community. So
Mhm.
I think the politicians should really have a better understanding. It doesn't have to do just a photo op and, oh, I visited the school, I did this. I have to listen and I have to come back and I have to change the things that they've asked me. And then I can do a photo op and say, okay, you have asked this, we have given you this. But one
Mhm.
of the things that I would like to see in the education reforms, or some of the things are create safe school environments free from harassment and gender-based violence. This is happening. It should be a policy, a government policy that is enforced. It should not be just something, many of the policies are symbolic nature. It is just,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, we will write it. There
Mhm.
should be budgets that go with these policies to a real reform. Real reform means you have to put funding into executing this. You cannot say we will have create safe school environments and there won't be harassment and think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. There
Yeah.
should be capacity building in schools. So there should be funding for them. And I'm saying this because we are doing this as part of this project in schools. A second thing that would be to eliminate barriers such as school fees, because in many of these countries, I visited a country, I won't say the name now. Uh, I was getting emotional when I listened to the stories and when I was shown the long distances by one school principal showing me between 2 and 17 kilometers, these girls must walk on a daily basis to and from school. They don't have transportation. So, and as they travel to the school, they are exposed to harassment. They are exposed to gender-based violence. So, I think if school fees are eliminated, uh, then parents may have the money to have transportation so that they can then arrive safely at school. Because many of those girls, they need bicycles because that is the mode of transport. On those in those areas, you cannot go with a car. There's no proper roads.
Mhm.
Uh, so another policy element that I would like to see in my lifetime is that governments prioritize scholarship programs and financial aid for these underprivileged girls, including those with disabilities, because the parents cannot afford. They are unemployed. There are no jobs. It's not that they don't want to have a job. Those parents are so hardworking. They would do anything, but there's no jobs. And even if in those communities they try to do something, there is no market. So the best thing is for them to get a scholarship to get their girl and boy through school.
Mhm.
So the issue of persons with disabilities is another thing very close to my heart. In this project, we have tried to incorporate at least 3% of the number that we have promised to build the capacity of girls in livelihood skills, that they will be from persons with disabilities.
Okay.
We cannot find the data on how many there are. And then when you work in the communities, there is such a stigma. The parents do not want their children to come out. So if there is a better way of dealing with this and handling persons with disabilities to level the playing field for them by incorporating assistive devices, I mean, the people with persons with disabilities are not many compared to the number that we have in schools. So why can't we have such policies where we bring in braille materials, sign language interpreters, mobility aids, and things like that? Many countries signed up to these international treaties and laws, but it's not really happening. So the policies for me, they are all there, symbolic, but they are not funded. and because of that, it's not happening. The last one, which I really want to be tried, is community-based education to
Mhm.
help girls who face not only mobility challenges but also the long distances. And for this model, it is something where I see within the community, because and the communities are very, very far from schools in some countries. There is just no way that you can expect those girls to reach a school, and there's no boarding facilities where they can go to. So for me, the best thing for a government then to do is let's have community-based education hubs. Such a
Mhm.
policy will help because there is distance education, a national distance education school, and those materials can be used to support a community leader, to
Mhm.
support them within the community. There can be an arrangement with the government, and so they can still get the school while they are so far. But these are, it sounds a bit maybe very a simple thing, but it can make a huge difference in the system to bring so many more girls and boys, because boys also drop out because of the challenge of the distances.
Right.
And then the final one that I would like to see integrated in schools is leadership training. We have what they call life skills. It's part of the curriculum in many countries. But life skills is one thing and leadership is another thing. So
Mhm.
I think because leadership doesn't only mean that you have to be in charge of an organization. Leadership can happen at any level, as you know, as a consultant of managing, a management consultant. It can happen at any level. So leadership is something that I would like to see in the curriculum. So I have quite a grocery list up there now, but I think my biggest wish is that those in charge of education should have a heart, should have a passion, and should have an understanding of the real needs, and should have a commitment to make those changes before we end up in another 30 years' time and say, so where are we now? And we are still there. Thank you.
Thank you. What passion. Oh my. Francis Ferreira, I feel that the NGOs and the entities that are supported by the Commonwealth of Learning are fortunate to have you. I thank you very much for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much, Anne, for this wonderful opportunity to share with you on my vision and my experience in this field. I'm indeed very blessed also to have these NGOs that we are working with, but also to have people like you in our court, because this is what I mean with a support structure. To tell our story, we need a support structure, and we need to nurture relationships to ensure that we achieve the goals that we have set ourselves up. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you, Francis. Listeners, we've been speaking with Mrs. Francis Ferreira, a senior advisor at the Commonwealth of Learning and a leader with a vision and a passion for the development of women and girls in this world of ours. Thank you for listening. Tune in again when we speak with another dynamic female leader.